Welcome to Phoenix Masonry Live.
A show about Masonic museum artifacts,
Interviews,
Masonic history,
and much more.
I am Frederick L. Milliken, Executive Director of Phoenix Masonry.
And I am Elena Llamas, Director of Public Relations for Phoenix Masonry.
And we are here to
celebrate
our Freemasonry.
Celebrando nuestra francmasonería.
That's what we do here. We celebrate Freemasonry. And today we are celebrating with Johnny Royal. Welcome to the show, Johnny.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for coming. And today we're doing something a little different. We had some technical difficulties on Johnny's side, so we're having him over the phone, and we'll be showing images and video while we interview him. So thank you very much for coming, Johnny. Do you want to tell us about Johnny, Fred?
Johnny Royal, born John Michael Herrera, is an American musician, film and commercial director, composer, entrepreneur, novelist, and occultist. Royal is best known as the founding member of the industrial rock band Black Lodge and as the director of the feature-length documentary film The Royal Art of Freemasonry, which was filmed over the course of 7 years and is the first feature-length documentary to explore every degree of the Freemasons, including the Master Mason, Knights Templar, and 33rd degrees.
Royal is an established commercial director and composer. Additionally, he is recognized for his associated compositions and recording sessions with record producers Jordy White, aka Twiggy Ramirez, Sean Bevan, Lee Miles, Zach Webb, and Grammy-nominated producer Johnny K.
As an entrepreneur, Royal is a co-founder and chief creative officer of creative advertising agency Dragon Creative, and has been the CEO of creative advertising agencies The Realm and Luthier Society, and the chief marketing officer of New York-based advertising agency Indelible Media. Royal's work as a novelist deals primarily with the occult. Well, welcome to the show again, Johnny. I see here you born in Spain, but you're from Pennsylvania, and now you live in Hollywood. How do you like all that?
Well, I've been traveling around quite a bit and never really stopped since I started. Like you said, I was born in Spain and then moved to Pennsylvania. I grew up in a town called Belle Vernon, and then I moved out to Los Angeles in 2005, and I've been here since.
Are you a Spanish descent?
Tell us about your filmmaking. Where did you learn that art?
Sure. So, yeah, I am of Spanish descent, and with filmmaking, that kind of came into focus as I was going through commercial directing, and the inspiration for the film came, I was initiated as a Freemason in 2008, and in 2010, I had the idea of trying to put together some type of film about Freemasonry without obviously breaking oaths or obligations that kind of explored all aspects of Freemasonry in the United States, at least. So that was really the start of the project, and then it moved into filming in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Filmed in many places in California. Different places in Tennessee. So it really kind of started taking me around to different lodges, different valleys of the Scottish Rite, to different chapters and councils and commanderies of the York Rite as well too.
Well, for non-Masons watching, Johnny, what is the Royal Art of Freemasonry? Why the title?
So in the 1800s, the craft of Freemasonry was known as the Royal Art because a lot of the royal families, members of the royal families in different countries, considered it the ultimate gentleman's art. To tie in with my last name now, and it really doesn't have anything to do with my last name, but it's about pursuing the craft of, it's the ultimate art form. So
Elaine?
that's where the title.
So is there an overall theme to your movie? I know it's called The Royal Art of Freemasonry, and that, screams Royal Arch. Do you want to explain a little bit about what the themes are?
Sure. So the main synopsis is that it's really the hero's quest, and it's about recognizing that the characters in Masonry and the degrees, we have these different characters from, in biblical context, some are that are of mythological origin, and as we call them, as Masonic tradition forms. But the main theme is that it's the hero's quest, and it's a recognition that lives, that we are these characters, that we can either be the hero or the villain of our own journey in our life based on the choices that we make every day.
Are you a Joseph Campbell guy?
I love Joseph Campbell.
I figure, because of the hero's quest. And what about Star Wars? Do you find an affinity with the themes?
Absolutely, and it's funny you bring up Joseph Campbell, because some of the members that I interviewed in the film that are main characters in the film, he's actually referenced several times in the movie.
Oh, excellent.
And I love Joseph Campbell. So,
did you write? Well, Johnny, did you write the movie yourself, Johnny?
I did. I wrote and directed the film. I also produced the film along with Robert Doan, who's my best friend, and Robert is a past master of Santa Monica Palisades Lodge, number 307, where I'm also a member of, and Robert also is in the Scottish Rite. And the other people working on the film are Sean Bevan, who's also a producer. Sean produced 9 Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson. He's worked on a ton of TV and film scoring projects. And his wife, Juliet Bevan, is an associate producer and also a composer. They have a band together called 8mm, who is a member of the Nashville Valley Scottish Rite. He's the organist, actually, for the degrees. He's one of the main composers on the film. And so a lot of the people involved in the making of, like, the creative team, are Freemasons, which is great because it really helped put the final elements of the story together.
Excellent. So it's made by Freemasons. And you mentioned the story. So is there a storyline here, a script? Are these spontaneous interviews? What is the format?
Yeah, so the format was they're spontaneous interviews, but I tried to ask the same questions to everybody that I interviewed, with the exception of some people that maybe weren't members of York Rite or Scottish Rite, didn't have the knowledge of certain degrees, so that format changed a little bit. But the format is that there's 3 acts to the film, and the first act is why people join and how they found the craft. The second act explores the allegories, the Masonic allegories of all of the degrees: Blue Lodge, which is 1 through 3, the Scottish Rite degrees 4 through 33, and then the York Rite, the Royal Arch, Cryptic Council, and the Knights Templar. And the final act is a time capsule piece where I asked the interviewees where they felt Freemasonry was headed in 100 years, where it would be 100 years from now. So those are the 3 acts, and those all tie together into the hero's quest.
Interesting. Oh, this sounds really,
let me make a comment here, because one of the things I did when I was master of my lodge, Johnny, was read the minutes of 100 years ago at each business meeting. And so,
oh wow, that's great. I love that.
And that into what you're thinking about, Yeah,
that's really fascinating. I got some really interesting answers. But the interesting thing is that there was a core message that kind of came out in the final section of the film about, asking people where they feel it's going to be 100 years from now. And the one consistency that came out in everybody's answer was that the core values of Freemasonry will remain the same, that the core principles and the teachings are eternal, and those things really won't change. The rituals themselves might evolve a little bit. The floor work might evolve a little bit. The way that certain words are spoken might evolve a little bit, but the core teachings and the principles of Freemasonry will remain eternal throughout all of time.
I think so too.
Excellent. That sounds like a profound and prophetic conclusion for the film. And you mentioned going back to the history of Royal Arch and what you mentioned at first about why royal and about royalty. Do you explore the history of Freemasonry specifically in England and Europe, or is this American Freemasonry? Where physically is the location and the focus of the film?
No, so we don't really go too deep into the history. I mean, there's plenty of, I wanted to do something different with this. There's plenty of subject pieces on Freemasonry that explore the historical context. And, you know, there's certain aspects of the documentary of the Royal Art that explore a little bit of the history, but this is more about the esoteric and personal context of Freemasonry, about, you know, what does the fourth degree mean to someone that goes through the fourth degree as a secret master? What are the lessons that they learned? How do they apply that to their daily life? What is the 32nd degree to someone that's a master of the royal secret? How did you feel going through the third degree, and what is the core lesson that you learned from that? So this is more about the esoteric and the personal context of, you know, the journey that that all of us had gone through that are in the film.
That makes
So what you're dealing with is how people experience their Freemasonry, how people live it and interpret it, each individually see it. Is that what the movie is more about?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. It's about the, you know, it's about the individual's journey through all of these different aspects of Freemasonry that they've experienced. And there's one really interesting interview that we had with a guy named Dr. Douglas Roberts. It's in the film. He's from Jamaica, and he talks about how he discovered Freemasonry. And in Jamaica, they would refer to the Freemasons as the Black Heart Men or the Dia Lawrence Men, and they referred to them as that because they all dressed in all black and white. And they were. He talks about how a lot of the rural people in the community were very much afraid of these men because they appeared mystical and they didn't understand it. But he became enlightened to the fact that Masonry was really nothing more than a brotherhood. And he pursued it, and we ended up getting our 32nd degree together. But it's a really interesting interview about, you know, and it takes you into that realm of, you know, how people that aren't initiated into the craft, some people can, you know, have these conspiracy theories about it, but once you go through it, you realize it's really just a fraternity, and it's about making good men better, and it's a progressive moral science taught through degrees only.
This makes perfect sense with what you were saying of the hero's quest. And for our viewers, we recommend, as Johnny mentioned here, you have time before you're watching the show to familiarize yourself with what the hero's quest is. And Johnny, if you don't mind, briefly, can you explain for those viewers who may not be familiar with the context, what are you talking about, the hero's quest?
Sure. So the hero's quest is, you know, it's a outline in a sense. You know, it goes back to Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, but it goes through these different stages, these evolutionary stages of a character where, you know, when the journey begins, you have kind of a call to adventure through the ordinary world, and then there's a meeting of the mentor, and there's the road of trials. Then you hit a threshold, and it's the character crossing that first threshold, and then you're approaching the inner aspects and beginning to reflect on the self, and it goes through all of these different things, and there's ordeals, and then there's kind of like an elixir or a boon or a reward given. Then there's a second threshold, and then you go up to death of dreams, and then the third threshold, and then it keeps moving up through, and then there's eventually like this resurrection, and then you hit the final threshold, the freedom to live. And that's the idea of the hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell kind of broke it down. And there's a lot of films that follow that. Star Wars is a great example. Lord of the Rings is another great example. But they all follow, you know, that idea of the hero's quest, the hero's journey. And It's something that goes back a long ways back in literature, and I didn't even realize that that was what the story was until I started putting together all of the footage over, you know, the beginning of the film. But when I started laying it together, I'm like, this is what it is. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm a big fan of the concept already. I mean, it sounds phenomenal because Freemasonry is an inner science, right? And your documentary, your film, is from what we're hearing here, is really set apart from the more historical and sort of not esoteric or not the inner journey of the Freemason as they progress through the degrees. As you're saying, it's very unique. I haven't seen a film like that yet, and so we couldn't watch it for this interview because it's in its final stages of creation. Before I ask you about that, Fred, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, you know, I really love what you're saying, Johnny, because so many people that produce something about Freemasonry make it a societal thing, and really it's a personal journey. And it sounds like that's your emphasis, the personal journey of Freemasonry. Am I right?
that's exactly right.
Cool.
Wow, it's just amazing. So tell us what's happening now with the film. We couldn't watch it because I'm going to put it in my words, it's in pieces. Can you tell us what's going on?
Now where we're at is we are getting ready to go into picture lock, which means that we get the entire stories laid out the way they want it, with the way we want it to, with all of the shots and the B-roll and the interviews. And then this is now going back to our supervising editor, who's Jason Pachomsky. And Jason worked on Game of Thrones and Mr. Robot, and he's also in our lodge in Santa Monica. He's an amazing editor. But he's going to take this, and then he smooths out all the transitions and everything. And then when that gets locked, it goes back into scoring. So then Sean Bevan, who's our music supervisor, will work on linking and succinct all of the different pieces of the dialogue, cleaning up dialogue that needs fixed, and then the score and the piano parts from Ernest, and then at the same time it goes into final coloring and finishing. So I think that the final version of the film will be ready by the end of this month, so before June 1st, and then from there, I can't really get into too much detail about what happens from there because there's a lot of on the distribution side of things, and I don't want to jump the gun on any of that, but I foresee a small theatrical run, and then definitely, you know, on demand, and you know, it'll be available in various other ways. And one of my hopes is that we'll be able to retain the rights so that we can do a type of tour around different lodges and valleys, and do screenings for those people. So, but we'll see what happens. It's getting toward that exciting moment where it's completely done, and then from there it's ready to be seen.
Well, from your trailer alone and your work, which is obviously really good, you already have a lot of expectation and a lot of Masons that are itching to watch this and to hear from you. So we're really grateful that you came on the show. How long has it taken to bring this project to fruition? I know that it's been a number of years.
7 years.
7 years. Wow. Well, before we explore that topic a little bit, you mentioned Sean, the music supervisor. He's worked with 9 Inch Nails and Marilyn Mason. For our viewers, Johnny is a musician, like we were saying, as we explained in the beginning of the show. He's a really good musician. He's on the heavier side of things. You know, grew up with thrash metal, and we're going to show you a bit of his music towards the end of the show, so you can get a taste of it. I have to say I liked it. It's really heavy, yet the vocals are very melodic. And we can direct people to check you out musically. Your Dark Lodge work is online for anybody who wants to find it. And you are very symbolic in your filmmaking and in your music and your music videos. You seem to have a very one of one of the reasons, and we'll admit this, online, that we were excited to have you here. And you are a stereotypical, I'm sorry, everybody in Freemasonry, Freemason, in that you characterize the diversity that Freemasonry currently has, and hopefully will continue to have, that we're all working for this great cause, and we have all kinds of different tastes and styles. And so we thought it was fantastic to have you on and show your music and your art here. And I know that you said 7 years it has taken to get to this point. Why 7 years? Can you tell us about the process that you've gone through?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple things. One was that I ended up going on tour, so that kind of put things on pause for a little bit. And another part was that it was really trying to figure out what the actual story was. I mean, I have, at the end of this thing, I have over 140 hours of footage. And getting that whittled down to 90 minutes is a very, very daunting task, and trying to basically tell a story backwards from all of this stuff over, so many years. And, but it came out the right way. It came out the way it was meant to. There was some really interesting things that happened during the making, during this whole process. I don't want to say, things of just, I guess I could, without getting into too much of a dogmatic aspect, but there were some very interesting kind of guiding lights that appeared throughout the making of this. And I think that there's something very special that's in this film, that I think that, where Masonry is today, at least, is that the men are joining because they feel this sense of this Renaissance aspect that they're looking for within themselves. And, the word Renaissance means rebirth or reawakening, but they're looking to wake up. They're looking to the fact that in modern society today, their jobs and things that they do, it's not enough. They're looking for more. They're looking for answers of who they really are and what they're here to do. And this film explores those types of topics of like really going within the self, covering, as we say in Masonry, that lost word, which is who we are. It's discovering our own identity and then being able to live our lives in accordance with that and to truly be bearers of light into the world. So,
yeah, well, I think what you're saying is very true. There is an itching. There's like a revival almost, inconformity within Freemasonry for more of this inward search. And I think what you said is phenomenal. I do think your film is special without knowing all the intricate lights that you mentioned, what they are. But I can tell from talking to you and watching your trailer that there is a depth to it, and there's a difference. Now we know. We didn't know prior to the show that it's not a historical film. It is based on the inner journey of the Freemason progressing through the degrees, and that in itself provides what people are hungry for within Freemasonry, which is more of this inner process, not so much the outward ceremony or the outward or the socialness as Frederick was putting it.
And let me come in here, Johnny. I've been writing for a number of years about people that I call seekers or searchers, and they're seeking and searching for a way to make a difference in life and to come to some kind of a way to leave a legacy and to make a difference. And Freemasonry offers that if only we will explain that to people. And it sounds to me like you're doing that. That's exactly what you believe and how you see things. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's absolutely right. That is what I'm hoping for, is that for those people, those seekers, and it's an interesting thing that you write about that, because it's something that I'm searching for these other people too. And I think that there are some very interesting times coming. And without getting too esoteric about this topic, but I think that the seekers of that light, when they see this, it's going to, whether they're initiated or they're not, I think it's going to really help create, ignite that spark even further. It comes from such a beautiful place within, from all of the people in the film, and the way that it's structured, that it's really going to, kind of ignite that spark in those seekers. So I agree with you there.
Well, as we were saying, or I was saying a while ago, Johnny really works with symbols. You can see, I'm going to put up that photograph I had of you with all your tattoos and rings, because that is symbolic in itself too. And he really works with images, symbols. The film, if you watch the trailer, which we will air shortly, and his music, and so they'll speak to your unconscious, and they will resonate with people who are seeking this depth. I believe big time. I have a good feeling about that too, with this film, based on exploring your work while we were preparing for this interview. And is this a good time to show the trailer? I think it is. For those who haven't seen it.
Yes, let's do that. The trailer.
Yes.
Let's talk about what's real.
I became a Freemason because I was obsessed with understanding what death was at a very young age.
It encourages the initiate to be comfortable with the fact that we are not immortal.
So how are you going to live your life in the time that you're here?
If you are going to know yourself, then you've got to ask these questions.
The fundamental message of Masonry is man's pursuit of communion with his Creator.
It's very much this out-of-body experience.
I learned secrecy about the inner self. It's a time outside of time. You're in another world.
The principles of Freemasonry are eternal.
Well, if that doesn't make you want to watch it,
you know what I'm thinking here, Johnny, is that you've made a creation to inspire people, and that's been your goal, if I'm interpreting you right. And you reach into the soul of people, if I'm interpreting you right. Say a little bit about what I'm thinking, perhaps might be along the same way you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, is that to inspire people by igniting that spark within them. And it's within everyone. And I did that by really going as deep as I could, not only within myself, but within the context of Freemasonry of, it's a symbolic system. It means something, it means something a little bit different to man or person within Masonry. But there is a commonality. There's this kind of common alchemical thread that runs throughout the symbolic system of Freemasonry. And I really, try to, bring that to light, to show that, one of the most important aspects that I learned within Masonry is that, to really take serious the concept that like Rob Doan says in that trailer and in part of his interview, that, we're not immortal, and that, it's like the old medieval saying, memento mori, remember that you must die. And that, as Greg Cherry says in the trailer, so, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in the time that you have here? And for me, I studied a lot of aspects of ontological philosophy. I studied a lot of esoteric moral philosophy, everything from existentialism to universalism. But the one thing that I found that I really believe it to be true is that it's very important how you live your life, because as a being of light and not as darkness, as a being of light, that it is our duty, our inherent duty to bring light into the world, to spread light. And if you go against the nature of a thing, if you throw a rock up into the air, we know that it's going to fall back down to earth at negative 9.79 meters per second square because there's gravity. So you can't go against the nature of a thing. And when you do, there are consequences. And I'm not talking about consequences of heaven or hell, but just consequences of the quantum mechanics of the physics and the laws of the universe that are set in place. So
right on.
That's the message that I'm trying to get out there, is that, you know, it's up to each and every individual human being and light into the world to leave it a better place than you found it.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it.
Yes, me too. I still not over how broad the inner aspect of this film is, just by, you know, I think it's a fantastic idea to have this theme of the hero's journey. And I completely believe you that you did not set out to do that, but you found the hero's journey within your work, because as you mentioned in the beginning, you know, in the conclusion of your film is that at the end of the day, you know, centuries from now, Freemasonry will have that core of itself, even if the ritual changes or the organization changes on the outside, the core will be there. Same thing with the hero's journey. It's the same thing with human spirituality and human inner evolution. So I think you're connecting Freemasonry to a grander scheme of humanity. And you mentioned you study other esoteric things, which it makes it obvious that where you're coming from is from a wealth of different streams of knowledge that really ultimately point towards the inner development of all these things that Freemasonry and its purpose is to be doing, aside from the other aspects that the organization has. So we're fans here of your take. And
you know what it reminds me of? I just, you know, just had a brain flash, but you're talking, Johnny, and while you're talking, all I can hear in music of my time, perhaps not your time, but it's, if you know the song, Billy Joel singing "The River of Dreams."
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, I think our viewers would love to hear how your first interest in Freemasonry was sparked. Tell us about your early encounters with Freemasonry.
Sure. Well, my most direct encounter, and I talk about this in the film, but my direct encounter was in 1997. I was on scholarship and I was studying in London. So I was living in London, England, and I had a class called tort law, and I thought it was the most awful thing in the world.
Boring.
Yeah. So I made friends with a couple other guys. And so we would skip the class and we would just go to the pubs. And one day I had one too many and I got lost trying to find my way home. And I ended up on Great Queen Street, and I turned around and I saw the Grand Lodge of England, the United Grand Lodge of England.
My goodness. Talk about guiding lights, right?
Yeah, it was the strangest thing, because I remember seeing the square and compass. There's two of them high above the doors on the building. And when I saw it, I don't know how to quite explain or put into words, but it was almost like it flipped this switch inside of me, and I started doing research, and I found out that the building was for a fraternity called the Freemasons, and I just studied and studied and studied, and 11 years later, when I ended up getting settled, and I moved to California in 2005. And I got initiated in 2008, but I just studied that whole time, and everything I could find and read on Masonry, I did. I was like, wow, I'm like, this is what I've been looking for so long, because these genius minds have basically taken and preserved, in the words of Adam Kendall, the best of mankind, and I wanted to be able to express my thinking in that manner, with that kind of eloquence. And to understand that, you know, words can only go so far, and that's what the ritual teaches in Freemasonry. All of the different ceremonies, the different degrees, is that, you know, even if you were to tell someone what all of these degrees are, and if you were to, you know, dive deep into, like, you know, all of these secrets that we have, it still wouldn't reveal the true secret of Masonry, because the true secret is only revealed to the individual going through the ceremony of the degree.
You have to experience it.
Exactly. You have to experience it. It's an experiential aspect of itself. And
absolutely.
I discovered it by, you know, having one too many pints in London, and then the you know, the United Grand Lodge of England was there. And the funny thing is that I also didn't time this film to be finished this year, but this year is also the tricentennial of the United Grand Lodge of England.
Right.
You know, so it's, like I said, there was some very interesting throughout the whole process of this. So
absolutely. Also, because I'm going to sound a little bit repetitive, but because of the tricentennial, a lot of history films, not a lot, but some history films have come out, and this one really breaks in with the inner path. It really is one aside from. Go on, Johnny. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, that's exactly right. And what I was going to say too is, you know, the United Grand Lodge of England, they released there's a 5-part special. I'm sure you guys are aware of, through BBC. But in my opinion, it's the total wrong approach, because again, it's, you know, people today are looking for, you know, that deeper esoteric aspect, and you're not going to be able to connect with people by trying to reveal certain secrets of the degrees, by showing how people are dressed in the degrees and these different things. It's the totally wrong approach, in my opinion. And I think, I'm not saying that that mine is any better, but mine comes from a place where, for me, for someone like myself, that, you know, I'm an intellectual person. I love to read. I love to study. But for someone like me, to appeal to someone like me, the approach I took with my project was that if I can really take a look at this and I can say, I want to know more, then that will be able to break through the wall of the storm that exists in the world today, and to bring light to those seekers of that light and shine a beacon of light there, so that they can find their path.
Yeah, we've come full circle back to seekers and searchers again, and it's there again is where you are.
Yes, and
Johnny, you sound like somebody that's read a little bit of Manly P. Hall also.
I have. I read everything I can. I mean, I have a pretty big library in my house, and
good.
I mean, I have everything from, you know, French history to Manly P. Hall to you know, every book I can find and buy on Masonry. I've read and studied everything that I can. You know, Martin Heidegger and Immanuel Kant and Aristotle and Socrates and Albert Camus. The Druids, the Golden Dawn system, you know, anything I can get my hands on, I read it and I find it, because there are truths and aspects of all philosophies and religions around the world.
Well, that comes through your work again, not just your film, but we're focusing here on the film because that is the purpose of this interview, but in your style in general. And I think this is a good time to show a couple screenshots that we pulled from one of your commercials that you do. You do have a commercial agency, an advertisement agency, or how would you describe Dragon Creative?
Yeah, it's a creative advertising agency, and we focus on strategic creative, producing strategic creative assets for clients. And, you know, we do everything from writing the strategy and auditing the marketing strategies, to producing the commercial content, the video content, the graphic design, booths, to the media buying, and to the marketing campaign. So it's a full service advertising agency. But, you know, again, for us, in my work there, and in my life in general, I was just talking about this with Sean Bevan. He was over here on Friday, and we were working on the film. And the funny thing I was saying to him, I was like, for the longest time, I thought, I was supposed to be, this big rock star, and I was fortunate, I got to tour and I got to play in really amazing big bands and artists and play some amazing shows. But the core values that I hold as who I am is that I'm a storyteller and I'm a story writer, and that comes from my where I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, because my grandpa would just tell us these stories, and my dad would tell us these stories, and I was just like, wow, when I really thought about it, I'm like, I'm a storyteller and a story writer, and the medium of how you express that is a tactic. The strategic value of it is understanding what you are and how you bring forth that light. And so for me, it's through story, and whether it's through music or film, those are just extensions of that. But what I like about the visual, the video aspect of, the film aspect of making a film, making a movie, making a commercial, is that I always look at it as telling a story, and it's about what kind of story are you telling? Are you telling a story that can give people hope? Are you telling a story that can make the world a better place? Or are you going to tell a story that leads people down a dark, crooked path into the abyss with no hope of return? So I think that those are important things to consider too, that for people that are writing music in today's culture, that are a part of any aspect of popular culture, doing video work, anything that can influence the mind and the psyche of an individual, because that is going to reflect on you, and that is going to echo again, whether you're living to the true nature of your potential of an ontological being of light, or whether you're going to be going against your nature of a being of light into darkness. So I take all those things very seriously, because I know that the power that I've been given as a gift to reach a lot of people with these mediums, that I hold it as a very serious responsibility.
Well, I'm going to put on screen right now just a list of some of the clients you've worked with. You can all see really, really great companies. And the screenshots that I was showing, Johnny, of the eye within the triangle painted on the wall and people dancing, that was for a commercial for who?
The triangle, that's for PB Electronics. So PB's clients are one of my personal favorites. Over the years, I've become really good friends with a lot of the guys over there. But the guy dancing, his name's Cast Excelsior. He's a past master of Culver City Crochet Lodge.
So you're bringing the Masons.
Yeah, of course. And with the mural, and just little things, little connecting things like that are always fun. But Cast is a very, very talented musician. He's a very smart guy. Definitely somebody, that's a seeker, that's kind of on that wavelength that I was talking about. But that was fun. He's a great dancer too, so he was perfect for that commercial spot. So.
Well, we don't have to, but this is a good time to bring in our beloved conspiracy theorists. You obviously worked in, a very profound symbol into that, PB Electronics commercial. How do you respond to somebody, suggesting that perhaps you're bringing in sort of an ideology or something into the mainstream media?
Well, first of all, I recognize that I always have a choice to my words, and that I don't necessarily have to respond. And that,
well, good answer. Great, we can leave it at that.
So, I mean, it's we say time is our most valuable commodity. So
exactly. You choose what you give you give time to. Well, we would like to show a little snippet of a video of you in Black Lodge, and while I get it. This is a show primarily for Freemasons, and your band Black Lodge. Do you want to explain where that name came from? Because it is not obvious.
Sure. So, it's funny because there was some controversy surrounding that name. And when I say it's funny, it's because that name actually comes from the Blackfoot Indians that were in the northern part of Middle America. And they believed that at a certain time of every year, that something called the Black Lodge would open up, which is when, you know, it was kind of like a astrological, astronomical occurrence, and it would open up this place where, from the Black Lodge, which was about going deep within the self, but from the Black Lodge you could go into the White Lodge or the Red Lodge. And David Lynch actually used part of that theology and mythology and his making of Twin Peaks. Black Lodge comes from.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we got a couple of videos to show. I'm going to show. We're going to show first a little bit of the PV electronics, so you can see. I think that's fair because we showed the screenshot. That's not, you know, that's something that caught my eye. Obviously, I'm like, wait a second, rewind. I got to show that. But we want to show how this commercial begins. We can play that right now. 1 second.
2, 3.
It's coming. You see what happened? I had prepared the other video. Okay, here we go.
Not getting on big screen.
Okay, we're sorry. This is a live show. I'm going to redo this. I had prepared the other video, and I'm not sure which. Okay, here we go. Thank you, audience.
Put it on big screen, Elena. There you go.
There it is. Is that you in the commercial playing guitar?
I was in the very beginning. Yeah, and that's me jumping around.
Yeah, it looked like you. Yeah, in the beginning, exactly. In there. Now we're gonna watch a bit of Black Lodge.
And for that commercial, that was an original score that I did with Nick Frost, and Nick and I have some music coming out soon. A project called The Blazing Hand that we did with on drums is Jorma Vick, who's in Eagles of Death Metal, and he was also in the band called the Bronx, and Eagles of Death Metal were the band that were unfortunately involved in the terror incident in France at the Bataclan, and we're working with Gilby Clarke from Guns N' Roses on some of the new stuff. So
awesome. Well, let's watch it, and here we go.
So come back to me, put me out of my misery, put me out of my misery. Don't wanna live without you. Can't go, can't turn away. So put me out of my misery, put me out of my misery, put me out of my misery.
Well, Johnny, we're having a great time. Unfortunately, it is time to start wrapping things up. As we usually do here, we show a short video. Fred, did you want to say something before?
Yeah, before we go to that, I'd like to say to Johnny, you know, we're just one more of the multi-talented individuals that we seek out on this show. And we've interviewed a few of them, and it always amazes me how somebody can be so good at so many different things.
Yes.
You have your music, you have Freemasonry, you have your movie making, you have your creative ad agencies. God knows what else you have, but you do every single thing well. And multi-talented people are a treasure to our society. And I salute you, Johnny Royal.
Thank you. And I think that everybody has that ability. And I've always believed that if you're going to do anything, do it the best that you can, or don't do it at all.
Well, you're
Absolutely.
certainly living by that. And I second everything that Fred said. And we are so happy that you came and that you are in Freemasonry. You're awesome in Freemasonry. Don't ever leave. And I know that you want to talk to you. Your passion for it and for mysticism and esotericism is obvious. It comes through your work in a deep spiritual quest way. And we are really appreciative of what you do here. And Johnny, we will say goodbye at the other end of this video.
Yeah, don't go away, Johnny. We're just going to show our artifact of the month, and hang on there, and then we'll be back to you.
Yeah, in this occasion, we have a special video for you. It's not our usual artifacts of the month. This is an article by Dr. David Harrison. You may be familiar with his work out of England, of the revolution, Freemasonry and the revolution in Latin America.
I am Frederick L. Milliken, Executive Director of Phoenixmasonry.
And I am Elena Llamas, Director of Public Relations for Phoenixmasonry.
And today we are going to talk about the revolution in Latin America.
There were a number of Freemasons involved in the American War of Independence and the French Revolution. Prominent men such as George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Lafayette, and Jean Paul Marat. The revolution that emerged in Latin America also involved a number of leading men who were Freemasons or were connected to Freemasonry. Revolutionaries such as Simón Bolívar, José de San Martín, Bernardo O'Higgins, and Francisco de Miranda. The complicated nexus that interlinks these men and their ideals certainly intertwines with the growth of the Enlightenment of the period, and indeed with Freemasonry, as is the shadowy links to Britain that some of these men had at the time.
Francisco de Miranda. Miranda was a military commander, revolutionary, and Freemason. He was born in Venezuela in 1750, and after leaving for Spain, he paid for a commission in the Spanish army and fought for a number of campaigns. He became involved in the American War of Independence and the French Revolution, and met such luminaries of the Enlightenment as George Washington, Thomas Paine, and Lafayette, before leading expeditions to invade Venezuela in an attempt to overthrow the Spanish royalist government. Had developed the idea of an independent Latin America that stretched from the Mississippi River in the north to Cape Horn in the south. And he was to become a figurehead in the quest for revolution in the Spanish-American colonies. In 1806, Miranda managed to obtain informal British help for his expedition, though it ended in failure. Miranda escaped to the British Caribbean before making his way to Britain, where he endeavored to gain further support. A year earlier, he had sought assistance from Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, but they had kept their distance from the scheme. After the failure of the first expedition, another expedition was to be assembled in 1808, headed by none other than erstwhile Freemason Arthur Wellesley, later to be the Duke of Wellington. But Napoleon's invasion of Spain put a stop to the venture. It would be 2 years later when, after Napoleon took the Spanish crown, that a junta took control of Caracas, and Miranda was invited to join the new government by Simón Bolívar while he was seeking support on a diplomatic visit to Britain. Miranda was persuaded by his fellow Freemason, but the decision was to be a fatal one. Miranda took the role of leading the Republic's forces, but by 1812, the Spanish royalist forces had gained the upper hand, and Miranda, believing the situation to be hopeless, tried to escape on a British ship. He was captured by Bolivar and some fellow revolutionary officers, and was turned over to the Spanish forces, where he was imprisoned, dying in jail in 1816.
José de San Martín. José de San Martín was an Argentinian military commander, revolutionary, and Freemason. Although his Masonic membership hinges somewhat on his link to the Lodge of the Rational Knights, otherwise known as the Lautaro Lodge. This lodge was more of a collection of like-minded men who wished to promote the ideals of the Spanish Enlightenment, ideals of liberty and equality under the guise of a Masonic gathering. San Martín had fought in the Peninsular War against France and was influenced by the ideas of the Spanish Enlightenment, while staying in Cadiz, where he may have been introduced to the Lodge of Rational Knights. After retiring from the army and settling in London for a while, he resided at the same house where Freemason Francisco de Miranda had lodged in Grafton Street a number of years before. San Martín then set sail for Argentina in January 1812 on a frigate called George Canning, named after the Freemason, with Carlos Maria de Alvear and Matias Sapiola, two other members of the lodge. And on arriving in Buenos Aires, the three of them formed a new lodge and promoted the ideals of liberty and assisted in spreading the ideas of independence from Spain. San Martín became the colonel of the Revolutionary Army during a long war with the Royalists. He commanded the Army of the North in Upper Peru, the Army of the Andes, which allied San Martín with fellow Freemason Bernardo O'Higgins, who became the leader of Chile. And San Martín became the protector of Peru after declaring its independence in 1821. He met with fellow Freemason and revolutionary Simón Bolívar at the Guayaquil Conference on the 26th of July, 1822. And there was an intention to join forces and defeat the remnants of the Royalist forces in Peru. However, after the conference, Bolívar and San Martín did not join forces, and San Martín resigned as protector of Peru, going on to leave South America, living the rest of his life in exile in Europe. He died in 1850, his body eventually being repatriated and finally being laid to rest in Buenos Aires Metropolitan Cathedral in 1880. Though, as he was suspected of being a Freemason, his mausoleum was situated in an extended wing of the cathedral. Simón Bolívar. Simón Bolívar was a Venezuelan military and political leader and a Freemason. Bolívar came from an aristocratic Creole family, and after his wife died, he ventured to Europe, where he became a Freemason in Cadiz in Spain. His visits shaping his ideas on liberty and on politics. He admired the British politician and Freemason George Canning, and also admired the romantic poet Lord Byron, who also became involved in revolutionary activities in Greece and had been involved in the quasi-Masonic Carbonari. It was on his return to Venezuela that his political and military ideas could be put to use. After Napoleon had taken the Spanish crown, Caracas and Venezuela formed a junta in 1810, and Bolívar was among those chosen to travel to London on a diplomatic mission to gain recognition and support. While in London, Bolívar met with Arthur Wellesley and approached the exiled Miranda to become directly involved in the new Venezuelan junta. On arriving back to Venezuela, independence was declared, and Miranda, after an introduction by Bolívar, was placed in command of the new Republic's army. Despite being a Mason, it did not stop Bolívar from arresting fellow Freemason Miranda as a traitor to the Republic in 1812, after suspecting him of fleeing from the Spanish Royalist forces, passing him on to the Spanish Royalists, who then shipped to Spain to languish in a prison until his death a few years later. Bolívar went on to become a leading commander of the Republican Army, being aided by British soldiers fresh from the Napoleonic Wars. He fought tirelessly in Venezuela, helping to restore the Venezuelan Republic twice, both of which he served as president, and in Peru, where he also became president, and a new country was founded in his honor called Bolivia. He's said to have founded a lodge in Peru in 1824 and to have become a Scottish Rite Mason. His vision was to found Gran Colombia, a collection of states that included Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Panama, northern Peru, and northwestern Brazil. This vision collapsed after his death in 1830 of tuberculosis, but Bolívar would always be known as El Libertador, the liberator.
Bernardo O'Higgins. Bernardo O'Higgins, as the name suggests, was of both Spanish and Irish descent. He was the illegitimate son of Ambrosio O'Higgins, a Spanish officer and adventurer born in Ireland. He was born in Chile, and though he never met his illustrious father, Ambrosio paid for his education, and he was eventually sent to England to complete this education. It was while he was in London that he met Francisco de Miranda, joining a lodge that had been established by Miranda, and became introduced to ideas about American independence. Miranda's lodge in London seemed to be similar to the La Toro Lodge, a collection of men with similar ideas, influenced by the Enlightenment and promoting the vision of an independent Latin America. O'Higgins returned to Chile in 1802 with these ideas, and in 1810, he took a role in acting against the French-dominated Spanish government, where a junta was formed in Chile. He had some military training and proved himself in a battle against the Spanish royalists, rising to become colonel. But as the Republicans were divided with differing ideas on the future of independence, the Spanish royalists made gains, and O'Higgins escaped to Argentina. It was in Argentina that he met fellow Freemason Jose de San Martin, who shared a similar political vision to O'Higgins, and together they went to Chile to defeat the Spanish royalists in 1817, with Chile declaring itself as an independent republic in 1818. O'Higgins became the Supreme Director of Chile in 1817, a position he held until he was deposed in a coup in 1823. After being deposed, O'Higgins went to Peru, where he met with another Freemason, Simon Bolivar, and offered support to fight the remaining royalist forces there. He was to stay exiled in Peru until his death in 1842. His remains were finally returned to Chile in 1869. For men such as these that sought liberty and equality, Masonic and political visions merged to form a revolutionary idealism. The type of Freemasonry that the La Toro Lodge practiced and promoted was certainly of a more political flavor, creating an outlet for like-minded men to examine the Enlightenment and to help from a vision for their ideas on a united, independent Latin America. These ideas changed South America, creating new countries such as Bolivia and changing the political structure of Latin America forever. The above article by David Harrison was previously published on The Square, November 2016. Copyright Dr. David Harrison, 2016.
Well, thank you to Dr. David Harrison for that. We wanted to show you the historical connection that Freemasonry has had with different revolutions. In the future, we will be showing you other two articles by Dr. David Harrison in similar fashion about the French Revolution and the revolution here in United States. Johnny, I have one last question for you. Your last name. You were born John Michael Herrera. And can you tell us where Johnny Michael comes from? We know where Johnny comes from.
Oh, yes, you mean Johnny Royal?
Yes, Royal.
Oh, yeah.
What did I say?
It's kind of a funny story. I was in a band called the Royal Fever a while back here in Hollywood, and we played on. We won this thing for the Chelsea Handler show, and all of us went by the last name Royal, like the Ramones.
Awesome.
Yeah, when MTV cut my check for my appearance on the Chelsea Handler show, they cut it as Johnny Royal. And my attorney at the time said, well, you can wait for several months to get another check, or you can go down to the courthouse and change your name. And so I just changed my name.
Well, a true rock star story there, as rock stars it gets. Yeah. Well, Johnny, thank you. Thank you again for being with us. It was a pleasure to have you. We look forward to what other works you come up with in the future. We'll certainly keep track of you on Phoenix Masonry. And that's all we have for you this time. And this is Frederick L. Milliken.
Thank you, and thank you to Phoenix Masonry for having me on the show.
Thank you.
We loved it. We loved it. And this is Frederick L. Milliken.
And Elena Llamas, partying on the square.